What's up, everyone, and welcome to Project XTalk, an Xbox podcast, episode number 165, presented by Save the Game Media. I'm your host, Kevin, and on today's episode, we're not talking about much news, but we do have our predictions for Xbox 2024 and the Game Pass drop, which is coming out hot to start the year. Before we get to that, got to introduce my co-host, JamPackSam. How you doing, buddy?
What's up? Doing very well. Happy New Year. This is the first time we're talking in
It is.
2024.
It
Exciting
is.
times. It feels the same as 2023, but
Mm-hmm.
here we are.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of new stuff to talk about throughout the year, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be another good year for games. Just I know we did our most anticipated last week, and the more I think of it, I'm like, man, I'm so excited, right? There's just a few weeks, and then we start getting the big hitters.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's going to be less for me, like my personal
Mm-hmm.
interest compared to last year, but for the broader people, the JRPG people with the January and February in particular, like you've got a lot of good stuff coming, so I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be doing our fantasy critic draft again this year. It is Patreon exclusive. So if you want that, go over to patreon.com, drop us that $1 per month. You get access to all of our exclusive content, bonus post shows, just like our current Patreon supporters have done. So thank you to Fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai and Knight, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, Mimi J, David Hotright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Alpaca Tom, and Lee Navarro. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you don't got that dollar to drop every month, you can catch us live right here on YouTube every Thursday. That's youtube.com/save the game media, or you can catch the audio free on all platforms Friday morning. While you're over there, please drop us that 5-star review. It does help us in the algorithm. I see it every week. I appreciate everyone dropping us those reviews. That's all the housekeeping we got for this week, though, Sam. I'm really interested because I've been playing a lot of games this holiday break we've been having here. So I got to go to you first. What have you been playing, my man?
Well, I don't take too long. I have been choosing my next path. Like I've been trying to figure out what I want to play next. I wrapped up Lies of P. We talked about that on last week's show, and I'm like, I'm in the mode for a Souls-like game. And when I'm in the mode, I need to stay in the mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so what better way to kick off the year than a little Wolong Fallen Dynasty DLC? So yeah, there are 3 DLCs that are out right now. I think that's all they've announced so far, but I played the first one back when it dropped in the summer. I did not play the second or third ones. So this week I spent my gaming time playing the Conqueror of Jiangdong DLC, I think is how you say it. It is DLC number 2. And yeah, if you had me in a life-threatening situation and you said, I will let you go if you tell me what Wolong Fallen Dynasty is about, no idea. Plot, total mystery to me. But gameplay very solid, so I'm having a good time with it.
That's hilarious. I mean, I don't have any idea what it's about. I thought it was based on some like novels, right? Like the Three Kingdoms or
I
something.
believe it's based on some novels from like a really long time ago. It's got a whole bunch of like famous historical figures in there, some of which I remember from like world history when I was in high school, none of which I paid enough attention to like build those connections. But I'm having a good time. The DLC's fun. I'm getting to that point where instead of it just being about skill, it's like you need to have specific builds equipped to handle these specific bosses. Like it's like the very deeper in-game stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm having to like rely on Reddit to give me some guides and things like that. But it's pushing me to kind of experiment with different things in the game and not just rely on what worked for me. So having a good time.
Do you find that when you go back to those games, especially, that like you have to relearn how to play the game, or you got to pick it up real quick?
I picked it up, I would say, after about maybe 45 minutes of getting back into the game a little bit. I'm remembering things, but coming off of like Lies of P going back to Wolong, they play very differently. Like Wolong's such a fast-paced, action-packed game, whereas Lies of P is very meticulous and you've got to plan your attacks a lot. So the control schemes are different as well. But after about 45 minutes or an hour, I kind of got back into the mode. And yeah, it definitely was frustrating a couple of times. Those bosses are tough. I hated myself for a little while, but we hung strong and kept in there.
I think I saw you mention in a Discord that you were raging a little bit there at one point.
Yeah, the between finishing Lies of P and getting that final boss and like finishing that final boss and then going back to Wolong and having that learning curve we were just talking about of getting back into the game and having some of the most difficult bosses they've got in the game. Like it was just I went to bed every night angry until I got through the boss and I'm like, this is the best gaming experience ever. I'm so good at these games. When I'm not beating the bosses, I hate every second of it. But it's a good time. It's getting me out of the comfort zone.
You know, you saying you went to bed thinking about it. It reminds me of that meme where like the couple's laying separately and the girl's like, "What is he thinking about?" And then you're just over there like, "How can I beat that Wolong boss?"
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I mean, like I literally was laying in bed and I rolled over to my fiance and I was like, I think I have to re-equip the earth abilities and stuff. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like,
What?
You'll see tomorrow. I just have to go to earth build, but that was me.
The Earth builds the way. All right. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. You're gonna go through the third one now.
I bought it last night, so that is up on the
Great.
roster right after this podcast. I'm going to go boot up the third one. I fully expect it to be more of the exact same thing, and that's fine by me. I just kind of have it in myself, like I want to finish it. Like I want to put the cherry on top and say that I played all of the Wolong content, and then just be done with it.
Yeah. Never touch it again.
Yeah,
Uninstall.
probably never going to touch it again.
Well, I have played quite a few games since we last met, and I've beaten 2 out of the 3 on this list over here. So I'm starting 2024 off pretty strong in that games complete category. So why don't we start with the first one that I knocked out Sunday in basically one sitting. It was like 1.5. I broke for lunch, but Sonic Generations.
Okay.
So the game's only like 4 to 5 hours long, and it was where I was one of those things where I'm just gonna play it. Like there's nothing else to do. It's a lazy Sunday. I'm just gonna play Sonic Generations because I got it for $2. What I didn't know was that this game it just takes levels from old Sonic games and then like puts them into this game, and they're like the whole premise is like some evil creature has broken time, and then the 2D Sonic, that little fat chubby one, and the 3D Sonic, the cooler chili dog eating one, have come together, and then you have to play like each level as both character, but like one will be 2D, one will be 3D. And there's like 9 levels, so it's not very long.
So nothing, yeah.
No, yeah. So I just knocked that out, and the only thing I'm thinking, I was like, the story is whatever. It's a Sonic game. I'm not here for the story. But this did reaffirm that, and this might be controversial, I like 3D Sonic so much more than 2D Sonic.
I feel like that's not the hottest take I've heard this week online. So like I definitely think that there's a fight to be fought for that. I think you're valid.
I just 3D Sonic has a lock-on button, which I think is a big part of it. Like I could just like bounce from enemy to enemy instead of like, oh, I gotta time my jump right and or I might get hit, and it's a whole thing. But yeah, Sonic Generations, it was fine, good, fun time. I also beat and played Eternites, which is an indie JRPG that came out in October. It came out a few months ago on PlayStation, and I was holding off for a sale. It went on sale during the holiday sale here. And this is an action RPG / dating sim.
Okay,
right up your alley, Sam. I know this is really going to appeal to you. The combat is serviceable. It's a lot of smash the square button until you get an indicator, then hit like right trigger to do more damage. But what it does have is like enemies with shields that you have to match elements to break through them, which can get frustrating at points. It's not the worst thing in the world, but that's literally the only difficulty mechanic in this whole game is you have to time your perfect rolls, which they give you a big bright red circle every time an enemy goes to attack you. It's like, you should hit the roll button now. And I'm like, thank you. This is very, very intuitive. Majority of the time you will spend in social sims though. Like you're on a train in the apocalypse, you gather a few girls and then one dude. They do a gay option in here for you to romance. And then you just kind of go on dates with them until you have to go fight some more monsters.
Interesting.
I enjoyed it. If I had to say one thing for those out there that like romance and these kind of social stuff in your JRPGs, this game does that very well. The social sim and romance elements are great, especially the romance, where most games I find imply romance, like they'll like flirt a little bit, but you'll never see anything. This game is full on like, we're going to have a very nice artistic drawing of you guys kissing in bed, and then we're gonna cut to a black screen. I'm like, I know what's going on here.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like Admittedly, looking at the actual action gameplay does not look bad. Like it's a visually pretty impressive looking game. Interestingly, when I go on Steam, though, it says similar to games you've played, Fallout 4. I I do
Don't
not
think
think
so.
I do not think the algorithm nailed it on that one, but yeah, glad you. So, how long did this one take you?
It's 8 hours is what my PlayStation says, so it's very short, especially for a JRPG style game made by one dude in Unity.
Oh,
They've already secured funding for their second game. I think they got like 7 million for their next one. So this was a very small project. I don't know how well it's sold, but must have done well enough. PlayStation support it, and now they got more funding. So good first effort for sure.
yeah, good for them. Cool. Yeah, well, you're definitely hitting a lot of different strides this week in the games you're playing.
Yeah, speaking of different strides, last game I've been playing, and I haven't beat this one yet. I am chapter 5, and I think there's 14, so I'm almost halfway done with it. I'll probably have it done by next show. Is Enslaved Odyssey to the West. This is also
Hmm.
a game I picked up on sale, going through the backlog. Got this one again for $2. This is from Ninja Theory, Xbox's own. I think it was like 2013, 2011,
Long
something
time ago.
long. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while. Um, the game is interesting. I don't think it's what I would call great.
Okay.
It's serviceable, but I'm trying to look at it through the lens of like that time period where a lot of the movement is jump to this glowing hand holdy thing, and then we're gonna have you like walk across a scaffolding and jump to the next one to like
Right.
navigate across this like linear area, and then you have like combat encounters in between those platforming sections.
Yeah, I just googled it. This game came out in October of 2010. So
2010, okay, even earlier than I
yeah,
thought.
so we're looking at 14 years ago this fall. How is the combat? Is
the
it
comp the
decent?
combat's fine. Like you have a few options. You have the melee combat where you have like this big pole. I think this is also based on that same story that Wukong is based on. Like because
Yeah, I thought that.
his name is Monkey. Like
Mhm.
that's what the main character's name is. You basically get enslaved by this woman who's like, "You're gonna help me get home after we just broke out of the slave ship." And I'm like, "Okay." So you fight robots. You have a staff which can do a few different things, has the melee ability. Also, you get the ability to shoot out of the staff eventually. Like you can stun them, just blow them up. You get a hoverboard, which is pretty sweet. Like there's some cool stuff going on here, but it is like, again, I think they were very constrained by the time frame, like
Mm.
budget that they were in. So looking at it in a 2024 lens, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if this game, like if this came out today, I think people would probably give this like a 6 or a 5.
Yeah, so you're playing this on PC? Like
Yes,
one of
on
yeah, okay.
my ROG Ally. Yeah, I
Y
grabbed it on Steam.
yeah, I have a copy of this on 360. I don't think it's backwards compatible, I'm pretty sure it's not,
Mm,
but I do wanna play it on the Xbox 360 because this
I
is one I've never gotten to.
I think it might be because I had it on my Xbox wish list. You can buy it on the Series X store.
Let's see. Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, it was added, so I can play this. Maybe that'll be next up on the roster after Wolong. We can do a 14-year late review show of
Rude.
Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
It's only like 9 hours, so it's not a big
Okay.
commitment. But I'm enjoying it. I like the story. It kind of gives me Horizon Zero Dawn vibes. And
Yeah.
it's weird because Horizon is obviously 2017, so 7 years after this game. But it's like post-apocalyptic. Everything's destroyed. Like we just crossed the Golden Gate Bridge. You get like visions of like what America used to look like. The character is like touching these things, and I'm like, this is kind of like Horizon. You're fighting giant robots. I just fought a giant dog robot, and I was like, all right, I'm seeing the influence here.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely one that I've heard a lot of good things about through the years. Again, to your point though, like how much of that is rose-colored glasses from the nostalgia of like the mid 2010s or the early 2010s where people were playing that back. I mean, this is a game that came out a month before Black Ops 1 dropped. So like, you probably have some nostalgia on that one. But yeah, cool. I'm glad you're somewhat digging it even if you are like accounting for the fact that yeah, might not have aged the best it probably could have.
Yeah, it's a good time. I like going back and seeing what Ninja Theory worked on in the past. I wanted to do that with Heavenly Sword. I think the PS3 streaming just doesn't allow. It's so bad, and then like the controls that
Yeah.
yeah. But Bleeding Edge, not going to touch. But thank you, Ninja Theory. I'm enjoying this, and I enjoy your other work. But That's all I got for this week. I've been playing a lot of games. I'm going to play Ukulele and the Impossible Layer next, I think.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I respect the variety going into the new year. A lot of different things getting checked off the backlog, so that's neat.
I'm trying to knock out as many games as I can before Like a Dragon and Persona come out, because then I'm like, it's all I have time for. I
Yeah.
can't
See,
play anything else.
I'm in that mode until probably I'm trying to think of the first thing that I might marginally even want to check out, and it might be like maybe Suicide Squad when it gets the price drop like 2 months after it launches. So like I am in backlog mode until mid spring at the earliest, just getting through things. Resident Evil 4 is in there, so I'm kind of bouncing around to a lot of different stuff. Don't know why I wanted some Molong, but here we are once again.
Well, speaking of the backlog, we only have one news story this week, and it's going to add to some people's backlog. It's the Game Pass update for January 2024. It's the first half, so they're coming out strong here because available today, we have Close to the Sun for cloud, console, and PC, Hell Let Loose for cloud, PC, and Xbox Series X and S. January 9th, you get Assassin's Creed Valhalla for cloud, console, PC, and Figment for cloud, console, PC. January 11th, Super Mega Baseball 4 for cloud, console, PC, and We Happy Few returns for cloud, console, PC. January 16th, Resident Evil 2 remake for cloud, console, PC, and Those Who Remain for cloud, console, and PC. You added any of those to the backlog there, Sam?
So I do want to check out Hell Let Loose. From what I've heard from people, it is very much a you probably should have friends to play this with. It's kind of like a war sim more so than an arcade shooter or even a Battlefield style game where it's still arcadey but a little bit more realistic. So I want to check that out. Also, Close to the Sun, I've heard decent things about. Um, but the big takeaway from me here is like if you haven't already played Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Resident Evil 2, those are some bangers. Like
Mm-hmm.
you definitely should check those out if you don't have anything to play or feel like you have nothing to play going into the first part of the new year. Both of those are just awesome additions, especially Valhalla. I mean, even with the base game alone, you're looking at like 80 hours to do everything, probably estimated. Like, if you really want to get
Jesus.
into it, but like, even just the main story, you're looking at weeks of gameplay. It's a very good time.
Yeah, I said that I think this list is a great drop, but there's nothing here for me. And I say that because like Assassin's Creed's not my jam, and I already own it because I game share with my brother. Resident Evil 2, same thing. Already own it, could play it if I want to. I've heard Close to the Sun kind of gives people some BioShock vibes. So if
Mhm.
people are looking for that kind of game, maybe check that one out. I think Alpaca Tom likes Hell Let Loose in the Discord. I think that's one he's talked about. So maybe check that out. But one I thought was interesting was We Happy Few. They were like, it returns. And I'm like, why did it go away? You own the studio. Like I didn't know it left Game Pass. I'm a little confused about what's going on with We Happy Few. Is there something I'm missing here?
Yeah, I remember I think there was some kind of little conundrum like in the fall or late summer of last year where I can't remember if it was a rights issue or like a publisher issue or something about how the game was released made it be removed temporarily. And I guess it's now coming back with 2024 being a new year, maybe. Either way, glad to see it back. Uh, I still want to check this one out. I never got around to actually playing this. I didn't hear great things about it, so it's probably not going to be like at the top of the list. But if anything, it's kind of like seeing all the Fallout games on there. Like it's an Xbox owned game. It's cool to see it still on the service now. You know, like let's bring it back. So cool to see it come back. Don't know if it's going to be at the top of my list though.
Yeah, I see it has very positive reviews on Steam, if that means
Oh
anything to you. I see it was published by Gearbox, though, so maybe there's some publishing agreement that's preventing Microsoft from keeping it there without paying for it.
yeah.
And God knows Embracer could use the money right now, so they probably are like, well, I want to bring that back.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yeah, I did not know that it had mostly positive on Steam. That kind of not that user review should sway anybody one way or another, but if it is getting positive reviews, it kind of makes me compelled to try it out a little more. So maybe we'll see what happens. I'm curious about it because I remember the build up was really good to it.
Yeah. Well, everyone go check out those games if you're interested. But that is all the news we have for this week. So, what we thought we would do is look forward to the rest of the year and give 5 predictions each of what we think could or will happen with Xbox this year. We tried to keep them pretty realistic. There might be one or two out there like pie in the sky type things, but these are things that we think have a chance of happening based on rumors and news and everything we've talked about previously. So, Sam, do you want to kick us off with your first prediction for 2024?
I can, and I'm just going in no particular order. They're just, 5 predictions. From me, number one, a new controller design, which is something that we saw in the FTC documents that were leaked last year. So it's not exactly something that would be a total shock for anybody. Um, but this is the new controller that is reported to bake in like cloud specific features where it connects directly to Microsoft servers. So you've got less lag if you're playing on like a phone or something. And on top of that, it bakes in some haptic feedback things like
Mm-hmm.
what the DualSense has, where developers can integrate more details into the way that the controller feels whenever they're playing games. So as they said, after all those leaks came out from the FTC case and everything was published, a little bit prematurely, plans have changed. Xbox is going to roll things out as they see fit. They might have been testing this internally and said, hey, let's shelve it and it's not going to be a thing. I do think, though, now that we are, coming up on 4 years into the life cycle of the Xbox Series X and S and PS5, the DualSense features are still making an impact on the way that people are playing games. Like the guns are still having that kind of like, yeah, haptic feedback thing in the triggers with the adaptive triggers. You still
Mm-hmm.
have that feeling of deeper integration for the DualSense, even though not a lot of people are talking about it. And so with the developers having gotten used to baking those features in and Microsoft seeing that, hey, they're still using these things on the PlayStation side, kind of makes sense to have parity there where they can. And I would not be surprised to see a new controller redesign.
I think that's a good prediction. I think that has a high probability of happening. And I say that this isn't one of my predictions because people have talked about the not mid-gen refresh, but the digital Series X that we talked about during those court leak documents, where if there was ever a time to be like, we have a new controller too, like bundle that in with the all digital Series X, put it out so the adopters of the already Series X, Series S can get their hands on it. I think that it would be the perfect, like, easy transition to a new controller.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, we'll get into the predictions on consoles and things here in a couple of minutes. I'm sure that we both have something on that. But I kind of going alongside that, maybe even make it the Elite Series 3. I mean,
Mm.
like it's been years since we've seen a revision for the Series 2. It's about time that we get something that's a little bit more robust. I think people still have drift issues.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, like it's still a residual issue where they haven't fixed the Elite Series 2. So figure that out, get the Elite Series 3 out there without any kind of stick drift, and maybe bake in some of these features and make that your controller, your elite controller, if you will, if you're not putting out a console like we've been talking about, where it makes sense to just make this the new main controller.
Don't they have the Elite Series Core? It's like a cheaper option.
They do. Yeah, that one doesn't include any of the back paddles or attachments,
Uh,
and it's white, but it still is the Elite Series 2. Like, it's still the same basic
oh, okay.
controller. Like, it's the
Okay.
same build, but one's white, one's black, and you can buy the attachments later.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was like this a lower end model that maybe they could like sunset that, replace it with like it comes with haptics now, like
Yeah.
But I think that yeah, good prediction. I think that one certainly has a shot at happening. Mine, where do I want to start with? Let's go with this one. Game Pass will be announced for another platform. And I'm
Ooh.
keeping my prediction vague. All right. I say platform, and that can mean a whole host of things. I know people have talked about PlayStation, Switch, and even our thumbnail I put on the Switch. I'm not necessarily saying PlayStation or Switch because we heard Phil Spencer a few months ago being like, we don't have any plans for that. Right. I just mean a new way to play Game Pass will be introduced, and we've seen that this year where it came to what MetaQuest, in December, where now you can do it in your VR helmet. I think we get something like that, or the long rumored like streaming stick, streaming box. Like maybe they
Mm,
figured that out. I really do think Xbox will continue to push like we got to get this more places. Maybe they expand their TV thing. It's not just Samsung anymore. It's now on every smart TV model or something along those lines, where I'm not saying it has to be those consoles specifically, but a new platform. I think Xbox Game Pass shows up on there.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one to throw out there, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm just going to go ahead and like my commentary leads into one of mine on that. Actually, one of my predictions is that Xbox partners with Valve to integrate Game Pass with Steam.
Ooh, I was thinking about that, and I was like, is that too far? Should I just leave it at platform?
I feel like an integration with Steam makes sense because Valve has no fear. Like they are dominating the PC space and they will never not dominate the PC space. And they seem to get a lot of positive feedback from the community when they integrate with other things, like make it as seamless as possible for people to enjoy whatever they want to enjoy. And so that could look like every game on Game Pass. If you see it on Steam, you log in with your Xbox account and have access to it via Steam if you want that, and you can get achievements and everything like that. Or it could look like in games that you play on Steam, like Halo Infinite, where you get a couple of bonuses if you have Game Pass thrown in there as well, like already exists today. And they just kind of build that program out, whatever that looks like. I do think that Game Pass getting integrated into more places, the same way they integrated into Riot last year or the year
Mhm.
before, whenever that was, it gave players more of a reason to subscribe to Game Pass. And adding that value in wherever they can is going to continue to grow the service through 2024 and beyond.
I think that's a great move if that was to happen. I know Microsoft really wants people to use the Xbox app and the Windows Store, and I gotta tell you, I gotta be honest with you, Microsoft. PC players, for some reason, die hard Steam. I don't personally get it, as I've said on the show many times. Epic Game Store gives me free games. They've been giving me free games all week, and I'm like, I love Epic. Thank you very much. So for me, the PC launcher debate doesn't really make sense. It's just clicking a different thing. But people that are diehard, I only use Steam. I think this would be a perfect way to get them into the Game Pass ecosystem. Be like, I'm gonna subscribe because then I can play everything on Steam. I don't have to use the Windows Store. I don't have to use the crappy Xbox app on PC. I can just have all my launcher right here, log in with an ID, and done.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense if they were to do that. Not saying that they will. That's probably a far-fetched
Mhm.
prediction if we're ranking them on like things that are probably happening to things that aren't. But whatever they choose to do, they've got to meet the players where they are, and they do that really well on Xbox because they control that whole ecosystem. Whereas on PC, technically they control the whole ecosystem from Windows side, but you can't control the user experience. Like if people tend to use Steam, then you don't need to build an integration into the Xbox app. Figure out a way to work with Valve more closely and bake it into the way that people play stuff every day.
Do you know what this reminds me of? I heard friends of the show over there at the trophy room. They were talking about PlayStation potentially expanding PS Plus to PC. I was listening to their show this morning, and my first thought was they should expand it into the Epic Game Store because PlayStation is like invested in Epic. Like that partnership makes a lot of sense to me. So like then my brain went to, well, Microsoft could do it with Steam then, like because I don't think Epic would want to upset PlayStation, one of their big investors. So it would be interesting to see the big two companies kind of move and start working more closely with the big two PC launchers.
Yeah, whenever I first wrote this prediction, I actually had swapped out Valve with Epic Games because I feel like Epic
Mm,
Games is more hungry for a win in the PC gaming
yeah,
space because their store is just tanking and no one's doing anything except redeeming the free games every week and playing Fortnite. But
true.
equally, I think that Microsoft is aware that they also need the wins in the PC gaming space, and partnering with Epic Games is going to immediately just get tons of calls of like, why Epic? Why wouldn't you go with Valve? And so they don't want that.
Yeah.
So I would be shocked to see them. I would be shocked to see Microsoft go with Valve, but if Microsoft or excuse me, Microsoft to go with Epic, but if Sony were to go with Epic, which again, like you said, makes sense naturally, then I could totally see Microsoft being like, oh, well, okay, yo, Gabe, like let's get something rolling. I think that'd be neat.
Yeah, and get Game Pass natively on Steam Deck. I can't stress that enough. Like that's another my prediction. Come to a new platform. Like just make it work. What are we
Yeah,
waiting for?
yeah.
All right. My next one. Where do I want to go? Let's go for this one. Everwild will be re-revealed at the Xbox Summer Showcase with a 2025 release date.
Ooh. Hmm.
So we saw Everwild almost 4 years ago at the time of recording, a few months away from 4 years, I believe. Or was it 2019? It might actually be longer because it might have been before the Series X came out that we saw Everwild. this game has been in development hell for a long time. They've had constant reboots over there, and I think it's time that Rare shows us something other than Sea of Thieves. I love Rare mainly from their previous games, not Sea of Thieves. I recognize Sea of Thieves is huge, but I want a new IP. I want something that like I can be excited about, that I can look forward to. And I don't know what Everwild will even look like at this point, but that's why I think we need the re-reveal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Microsoft finds themselves in an interesting place where that's kind of where they're at with a lot of the games they've talked about. Like when it comes time to talk about Everwild, it really needs to be kind of revamped when it comes to how we talk about it and kind of reset the board. I think Perfect Dark needs that exact same thing. I would say like I don't know if Indiana Jones needs that kind of treatment, but like it's been so long in any kind of like large capacity. You kind of need to reset the expectation and show people what you're working on. I want to see more games this year. Um, and yeah, it has been 4 years. It was revealed at EXO 19, which is a throwback.
Jesus.
Yeah, think about that nomenclature there, the naming scheme.
Mhm.
Very interesting. But yeah, I think that's a good prediction. I think that that's one thing I hope to see too is like more reveals, re-reveals, that kind of thing to get these games back on track when we're talking about the marketing beats that we're trying to hit.
Because my whole thought process is like we kind of know what 2024 looks like.
Mhm.
One of my predictions might throw a wrench in that, but 2025 we have. I think Fable is probably a good shout for 2025. But other than that, like, is Clockwork Revolution 2025? I know some people think it's this year. I don't understand that at all. No way is that South of Midnight. Is that 2025? To me, I was like, I always read that as like 2026 because we got
Mhm.
absolutely nothing from that trailer. Like, I think last year's showcase kind of did this whole here's what's coming in the immediate future and then a little farther out. So for me, Everwild is kind of like, we've been sitting on this, we've been working on it, let's get this one out next year. Like, here's your look forward to this next year while we continue working on those later out games that we announced
Yeah,
last
I
year.
think it's difficult because like we built an expectation in modern gaming of whenever we see a big showcase or something and we get these reveals, I know that for me personally, anything I see in 2023, you're looking at 2025 games. Like that is not something that's coming out next year unless it's specifically like this is the new Call of Duty trailer coming this year, or if it's something that has a definitive release date tied to it. If it's more of an abstract, like you mentioned South of Midnight, you see that this is like a tone setter. This is
Mm-hmm.
the earliest of the early sample.
Concepts.
Yeah, like this is like whenever they release a single before an album. Like you're looking at a couple of months before you actually get the full album, and in the gaming world, that's a couple of years for the full game. But I think it would be interesting to see what the timeline is internally for Xbox of like a game like South of Midnight. Is that a AAA game or is it a AA level game that they might be able to put out faster? Same with Clockwork Revolution. Um, like how are all these games being treated? Like obviously Hellblade 2 is a big AAA game that's going to be taking its time, has taken its time, but compare that to something smaller like we've seen with like a Towerborn. Like those are two totally different scale games, both
Mm-hmm.
Xbox games, but like what's the timeline like for those individually? So yeah, we'll see what comes of it, but I would definitely like to see more info.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get to your next one, we did ask the community in our Discord, which you can join. The link is down below in the description. Alpaca Tom put, they announced Crash Bandicoot 5 as an exclusive releasing this holiday. Don't toy with me. All right. I see your other comment here in the chat about Kazooie. Just no banjo, just Kazooie, and you fly around. Ridiculous. All right. You're
Oh,
toying with my emotions. And the Gaming Together pod says Activision backwards compatibility dropped directly into Game Pass.
ooh, ooh, that would be very interesting. I would definitely like to see that personally. And I mean, if we want to meander into my one of my
Yeah, let's
predictions
do
as
it.
well, I believe that every Xbox 360 and Xbox One Call of Duty game comes to Game Pass for console, specifically for console.
Mm,
Because I feel like the PC versions, I don't know why, haven't looked into it myself, probably tied up in some kind of weird legal publishing thing, potentially. I don't know the details behind that, but I feel like for console in particular, they fixed the servers late last year for some of the games that were having issues. Like I think Modern Warfare 3 was broken for a little while, Black Ops 2, same thing. Um, but getting all that stuff back online, getting it ready to rock. Uh, those games coming to Game Pass for console makes a lot of sense. The hype for the Activision Blizzard acquisition was real last year. That's what everybody was kind of talking about as things closed. And Phil has even kind of teased like nothing coming in 2023, more info coming in 2024. So I think that's a safe bet of all of those older Call of Duty games. The big question is, though, what's the cutoff? Like, are we talking about everything pre Xbox Series X and S coming to Game Pass? Are we talking about everything up to Modern Warfare 3 or even Modern Warfare 2 from last year, 2 years ago, whatever? Yeah, that's kind of my question is like, what's the statute of limitations? I don't know if that's the right term or not, but like, where are we drawing the line, Phil?
Don't draw the line. Put them all on there from the
Yeah,
first. I want those Call of Duty 2 that I was playing on the kiosk, straining
yeah.
my neck. All right, that's what I want. I want all those thrown on there. I definitely think we get. I don't know about a backwards compatibility drop because they did say they reached the limits of what they can do, and I know there's the whole we could get all these Marvel games if Xbox could work out an agreement for the Activision developed ones. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So that might be a pie in the sky from gaming together, but I think yours is pretty realistic that like we'll see the Call of Duty drops. And in my mind, I know some people were like expecting them kind of in January for some reason. I saw some people being like, "Where's the Activision games in the drop we talk about?" And I totally forgot that. Honestly, we were still waiting for those. But if you wanted to build hype and kind of remind everyone, like, "Hey, we bought these guys," like look forward to something, I would do it closer to like the spring, like maybe start sprinkling like March, April, leading up to the showcase to get people excited. And then, they're going to be integrated into that June showcase. Like bring like, if you want to see what's next, come check out our showcase.
Yeah, I think that, thinking through how they could potentially do it, I think it would be painful to make people wait for so long,
Oh, they're
but
going to do it though.
yeah, but like we all know that a new Call of Duty is coming out this year. They've said that they've scrapped the plans to not have a new one. I think that was last year where they were supposed to not have one with
Hmm.
Modern Warfare 3. So there's definitely one coming in 2024. So like they go through the hype trailer, all of that, it's Black Ops, whatever, whatever the game ends up being. And then afterwards feels like, and you can explore the legacy of Call of Duty starting today with
Oh,
every Call of Duty game ever made on Xbox Game Pass. And like
that does
that,
seem like something he would do.
chills down my, like I got goosebumps right now. Like that would be the best moment ever. Even though it's just a whole bunch of old games at the end of the day, it's still
Yeah.
so hyped to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, it was hype when they were like, you can play these 20 Bethesda classics
Yeah.
right now, right? Like everyone was excited for that. So I think that is a mic drop moment, like a
Yeah.
big deal, even though they are old games. I think people would still be excited. And
Oh, 100%.
I can see him doing that as much as people don't want to wait until June.
I think it's worth the wait to have that moment personally. Like I think that is so exciting, and then that kicks off an entire summer of old school Call of Duty. Like all of the guys are getting back on. It's like, hey, I know we haven't talked since high school, but like Modern Warfare 3 is on Game Pass right now. You wanna go back, and that just gets me excited. I love that kind of
I
stuff.
got marathon commando knives. Let's go.
Yes.
All right. Where do I want to go with my next prediction? I will go to another game that there are rumors about this. I want to be clear. So this isn't one I just made up. I did see a little. I know there's been a trademark for this, but I think I added a little something to it, or maybe other people might have said this. But Double Fine will reveal and release their new game as a shadow drop during the next developer direct. Apparently, it's called Kiln, but
Okay.
when I Googled that, it was a like concept from 2017
Mhm.
about it was like a multiplayer game where you're like little pottery figures and you have to like inflict ceramic damage it was a whole thing. And I don't know if that's still the case or they reworked the game. That's apparently one of the rumor that's part of the rumor that is the title of the game. And Double Fine put out that statement that's like, we're going to show you when we're ready. And I was like, you clearly see people talking about this now. So is this saying like it's coming, don't worry, or like not so fast,
Yeah. I think that, thinking back to like Hi Fi Rush is the first example we've really had of that, of like early year showcase and then drop within the same day or same week or whatever that, close proximity looks like. I think Double Fine is a good fit for that because I think that whenever you have a showcase, you have this expectation now that something bigger is going to come from it. And so you've got to kind of satiate that for the audience. But at the same time, you don't want to have a new Double Fine game and then build it up month after month and up to like multiple years. And then it comes out and it's like, oh, well, didn't really hit the expectation. Like you've got to set the expectation properly. And I think that with Double Fine, there's a lot of hype around whatever they come out with next because they're so well respected. Tim Schafer is one of the best of the best. And so that would be something that would make this showcase stand out even above something like Hi-Fi Rush that came last year. Like if it's a good new Double Fine game, that's great.
I love Psychonauts 2, especially. Like, I think that's one of the best 3D platformers we've had in years. And the reason I think Double Fine, I'm agreeing with you, it would be perfect for this sort of announcement is Double Fine has a very weird game design, artistic, like their whole mantra is like, we make weird games. And like, maybe they're not the most appealing to look at. Like, I think some of the characters in Psychonauts are ugly as all hell, but
Oh, yeah.
like the game is amazing. So I think if you were like, here's what we're working on, and then we'll show, just come back 2025. I don't know if people are going to be like super hyped for it. You know, they're going to look at it and be like, kind of looks ugly. But if you were like, we got a brand new game you can play today on Game Pass, release this game, maybe it's a double A game, what they are known for. And then people are like, you know what? Like, perfect. The hype from the announcement, the showcase that or the developer direct, I think it could be beneficial for them to get that kind of buzz. And then hopefully the game is great. So when people do check it out, they stick with it. If it's a multiplayer game, again, I have no idea what this game is.
Yeah, who really knows what the game is going to be? I do think that with the showcases in particular, they're smaller, and then it's also kind of catered more towards the hardcore Xbox audience or the hardcore gaming audience, to where they might be more receptive of a artistic game like what Double Fine puts out, where it's a little bit more abstract compared to something traditional. Like even looking at a game like Starfield, where anybody that's remotely into games looks at that and you're like, "Ooh, neat space adventure from Bethesda. Cool. Forza, racing cars, Call of Duty, shooting guns, like the basics things that would get a lot of people hyped up." Double Fine isn't that. And
Mhm.
so whenever people are looking at their multi-year layout of PlayStation versus Xbox versus Nintendo versus PC or whatever, having Double Fine on the list is good, but it's not going to win you brownie points whenever like people are talking at the lunch table about what the best console is they want to ask their parents for at Christmas. So Double Fine is just not that game or not that studio, and
Mhm.
that's okay. They don't have to be, but I do think it's a good fit for the showcases.
Yeah, no one's over there being like, well, you got Spider-Man, but I got
Yeah,
Psychonauts.
you got God of War Ragnarok DLC. Let me tell you, Psychonauts 2, rad, banging games.
All right. Well, Sam, what is your next prediction?
My next prediction, which one do I want to go with? We'll go ahead and get this one out of the way. No new console announcements this year.
Ooh, really?
This year in particular, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that this is the one out of everything that I've said today, and I say a lot of things that could be wrong. I think this is probably the one that's the most likely to be incorrect. But I think that Phil already said, like, we don't have a mid console refresh. And so that kind of set the expectation that the Series X is the thing that's going to be here to stay. Will we see a console revision like we've seen with the digital one that was leaked? And, we talked about all of that. I do think that comes. I don't know if it comes in 2025, especially with the backlash around the death of physical media. We've seen a lot of conversation around that, but also equally, is that just a pocket of conversation in the communities that I spend time in as somebody who collects games and likes that physical media? Am I the one that's out of touch? The kids, are the
This
kids wrong? Like,
guy.
yeah, am I just an old
No.
man yelling at a cloud? Maybe. But it's not out of the realm. I don't think that 2024 is going to be the year. I do think 2025 makes sense. I mean, we're halfway through a 10-year cycle as of next year. So I think it makes sense to say, hey, here's an Xbox Series X with 2 terabytes of storage and no disk drive, still $499. Sick. Sounds like a really good deal.
Yeah, my whole thing with the digital Series X is if the PS5 Pro, strongly rumored, is indeed coming out this holiday. One, I don't think you need to get the digital out before that. You don't
Mhm.
want the digital coming out with the PS5 Pro at the same time frame. So get the digital out sooner in the year, and you need to not raise the price. First of all, like, it needs to be cheaper or at least the same price, but offer more. So I think that 2 terabytes of storage, like if that same price as the current Series X, great. If they don't want to do more storage, lower the price, make it a cheaper investment, kind of like what the Series S is, which we know is their most popular console. Series S have actually outselling the Series X. So keep that competition going, because if they're really not going to do a mid-gen refresh and compete on that power level, which I know the rumored PS5 Pro specs aren't like absolutely the jump that it was from PS4 to PS4 Pro or PS4 to PS5. Like it's more of a small gradual jump, but I still think people will look at that and be like, well, I'm just going to get the PS5 Pro, unless, and this is my whole thing, I think the PS5 Pro is going to be like $650.
Yeah. I mean, the price is going to be a big thing, especially in the economy that we're in right now, of thinking about the PS5 Pro. Like, if it is disgustingly expensive and the benefits you get from it aren't really great compared to what we got with the PS4 Pro, like, even right now, if you aren't somebody who is a graphics fiend, like, you're not trying to get the best of the best, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 are phenomenal. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need much more than what they already put out. I mean, maybe you could push the frame rates on some games beyond 30 FPS. Like, if there was a new Xbox Series X, would Bethesda unlock the frame rate on Starfield, for example, or something like that? But on the PlayStation 5 side, seems like all their games run about as well as you'd ever want them to. And so then it becomes, if somebody's, in line at Target or whatever, and they're comparing these two things, PS5 Pro versus Xbox Series X, I think it makes sense for Microsoft to drop that price back down to where they had it at the holiday. Of like, a new console comes out, now
Yeah.
it's $399. And $399,
350.
yeah, even better. Yeah, 350 is even better. I feel like $399 is $100 cheaper than it was at
Mm-hmm.
launch, but probably more memory because now that, or I should say more storage, because the storage is cheaper now because we've gone 4 years and storage becomes cheaper over time, especially with SSDs. 400 seems like the right price point. I don't even know if you need a new console for that. Like, just drop the price and you kind of already have some pretty good leverage of just having the regular Series X out there.
How do you feel? Because I'm with you on everything you're talking about. How do you feel about those rumors that I've seen people talking about where Xbox is going to start the next gen in 2026? I personally think it's a bunch of hogwash. Like, I do not see Xbox being like, we're going to go early. Like, their court document said 2027, 2028. And in my mind, that always makes sense. I think 6 years, like, nobody's buying the current consoles. Putting out a better, more expensive console in 2026 isn't gonna suddenly turn everything around in terms of console sales. And again, they're not concerned with console sales. They want Game Pass subs. So I personally don't put much stock in that rumor.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point where we have grown out of the idea of having a more powerful thing year after year, because we've hit this threshold where games are looking about as good as they ever have. And even comparing games that came out 5 years ago, there's a lot of similarities between those games and the games that we have today. Even looking at PS4 Pro
Mm-hmm.
games versus PS5 games or Xbox Series X games, they look pretty much the same. And so now, if there are incremental improvements, people are looking less at the graphics that they're able to put out and more at the games that they're able to play on them. And so I think with the Xbox Series X, it's doing as well as it can as a console. I think that it's got a lot more power left in it, a lot more optimization. We see with Baldur's Gate 3, they're figuring out ways to make the most of that console, even when it seems impossible. They're working around it and doing what they can. And I think that leapfrogging that, the idea is an interesting one of them having the more powerful console for 2 years. Let's just say that it's a 2 year time frame, but then you've got the least powerful console for 2 years, and like then you're out. And so now PlayStation still has strong branding, and now you've got the, by definition on paper, weaker console that's out there on the
Mm-hmm.
market. You don't want to be losing for 2 years just to win for two, and then probably have the other win outweigh yours. So no, I
Yeah.
don't. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. I can't see it either. W- we'll see if the digital console happens. I still think yes, but we'll see. We'll see. All right. I got 2 left. You got 1. So I'm going to go with my more reasonable prediction, I think. And that
Okay.
is Hellblade 2 will score a 90 plus on Meta / OpenCritic
Ooh,
and be nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
everything about that.
Yeah. I know we're bigging up Hellblade 2 a lot. All right. Between last week's episode and now me saying this, something just I feel it in my bones that Hellblade 2 is really going to be that narrative masterpiece game that Xbox has been waiting for. And I just think from the visual stand, like fidelity wise, it looks phenomenal. They've clearly improved the combat, and the story of Hellblade 1 is fantastic. They've had 7 years or something to work on this one. I know they did Bleeding Edge in between there, but they've been working away at this game for so long now. Microsoft has pumped clearly so much money into this between marketing and getting it to look the best, run the best on Xbox. I feel like between Starfield and then this game, I feel like this game has the better chance, knowing like what critics kind of look for in those critically acclaimed games.
Yeah, I think that the way you framed it up is really important of like when critics are looking at Hellblade 2, thinking about the message that's going to be behind it, thinking about the quality that it's got, the audio design, things like that. That's what the critics are looking for. And so if you're looking at gaming industry professionals that are nominating games of the year, I think that Hellblade 2, if it pans out to be the game that it seems like it's going to be, definitely is going to be in the running for that. I think that the Metacritic score is also an interesting one. I'm always cautiously optimistic. Like I expect the worst and hope for the best, just because like we've been burned by Xbox before on a couple of these things. Like I know we keep bringing up thing, but Redfall, I mean, like it was an arcane. Who would have thought, that Redfall would have ended up being what it was?
Oh,
Um,
56.
yeah, and so like going into 2024, I don't think that Hellblade 2 is going to be anywhere near what Redfall was, but I would rather open up Metacritic on, the morning of the reviews and be like, "Oh my god, a 96? Oh, this is great."
Yo,
And then
if it
yeah,
gets I'll let you finish, but if it gets a 96, I'm not going to shut up about it for the entire. That's my personality at that point. All right,
I mean,
I
that's
am the
fine.
Hellblade guy.
Yeah, I mean, if we open it up and it gets like a 96, I'm going to be absolutely through, above the moon about the entire thing. But equally, if I open it up and it gets an 82 or whatever, I'm not going to be disappointed in that. Like it's still going to be a fine game that I'm excited to go play. So I'm trying to like temper my expectations, but out of all of the games that Xbox has had cooking, I think this is the one that has the most potential that's on the roster right now.
Same, yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to win Game of the Year. I just think like finally, after a decade or whatever,
Yeah.
Xbox is going to have like the nominee, and if whether or not it wins will depend on everything else coming out next year. Like next year has some pretty strong contenders. Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is looking like
Oh yeah.
a world class game. So I don't even know what's going to go on. Does the Last of Us Part 2 remaster get in the nomination?
God.
It shouldn't, but I was making a joke. But all right, Sam, you want to hit me with your final prediction?
I do. So, my final prediction is that Xbox is going to have a bigger focus on games rather than how you play them.
Oh,
And so, I think that I know that I've seen it over the past couple of years, and we saw, I think it was Sarah Bond that talked about it during the FTC hearing, but cloud has not panned out to be what they had
yep.
thought that it would be. It, put Project Keystone on hold where it was that dongle style or the small mini console that's all cloud based stuff you could just plug into your TV. That was put on hold. So the writing is kind of on the wall, not that cloud is dying or that it's ever going to die, but that it's not going to be the focus of how Microsoft frames up the future of their gaming business. And going into 2024, I think that it's going to be, like I was saying earlier, less about how you're playing the games and more about the games you're playing. And I think we see that with how people talk about games still today. Like PlayStation's got Spider-Man 2, they got the God of War Ragnarok DLC, all of that stuff. It kind of dominated the conversation towards the latter part of last year because all of the big Xbox games had come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had Starfield, we had Forza, things like that were good wins, but people still want to see what the games are. And so I think that we were talking about Everwild earlier. More gameplay is going to get shown off. More talking about games like Towerborn that are imminent, Avowed that should be coming out very soon. More stuff like Hellblade, gameplay, combat, that kind of stuff. Talking more about the games that we're actually playing versus, oh, you're going to be able to stream it on Samsung and TCL and all these different TV brands. Not that they won't do that, but that it's not going to be a core part of the marketing beat. That's my prediction.
So, as opposed to my first prediction where I said Game Pass is going to a new platform, you're kind of taking the opposite approach where we're not worrying about that. We're going to market our games this year, which I think is great. Like, we need to know the games we're actually going to be playing to subscribe to the service. One thing I want to say about this, and I probably should have brought it up during my first prediction, but that rumored mobile store is supposed to be coming next year. I don't know whether that happens or not. I think that would be a big push for them to be like, you can now play Xbox or Activision King, however they market it, games on your phone, and they would push that mobile store. Maybe there's some Game Pass integration into it. Maybe there's some perks for being a Game Pass subscriber. I don't really know what their overall plans with mobile look like, but that is the only thing I see maybe being like a big marketing push that could not be game specific related.
Yeah, I think that, and just to clarify and reiterate, like, I still think they're going to be doing these things. I still think they're going to be spreading and putting Game Pass on different places. We talked about the Valve integrations and stuff earlier. I just think that they're going to be talking more about the games. I do agree the mobile store is a really interesting one. I don't know how they're navigating that, because it kind of goes back to that convenience thing we were talking about with the PC players earlier, where even like if I look at my iPhone and I'm looking for games to play, I'm not, it's a big ask to get people to go to the App Store, download another store, log in with their Xbox information, and then download their games versus just going and downloading Diablo Immortal or Warcraft Rumble or whatever they want to play that day. You know, like, you've got 5 minutes of somebody on the toilet looking for a game before like their interest is gone. So you've really got to capitalize on that 4 minutes and make them really get into something before, like, you know, they flush and go away, because then you got to wait 24 hours. Did you like my analogy?
Yeah. Well, 24 hours. There's multiple times a day where you can be on the toilet. All right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But you know what I think they should do? Update the Xbox app currently and just somehow get the store built into that thing.
Yeah.
Because
they could do that. Yeah.
I go and play Jewel, get those daily rewards points for playing the Jewel in my 5 minutes. And if I had other games, like hook up some Game Pass rewards, like play a mobile game is now worth 20 points or whatever, right? Like they have the PC one where it's like play a PC game, you get 30 or 50 or something like that. Like they should do that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense too. And they've got the library there to do it. The big question is, like, you know, you look at a game like Fallout Shelter, where it is now a Microsoft game. It is a Bethesda owned property. Do you pull that from the App Store? Do they exist alongside each other? Because if they're just if they're existing alongside each other, what's to get somebody playing the Xbox version versus the App Store version? Like, what does that look like? Same thing with Diablo Immortal, where like it exists already. Do you pull it or reintegrate it in a weird way? But yeah, I totally agree. Centralizing that experience makes a lot of sense. Maybe it's shortcuts to like another store. I don't know what they have planned, but yeah, mobile is definitely part of their plan. So we'll see what they have.
All right, Sam, my last prediction, maybe my most pie in the sky one, and not a new one for people, longtime listeners. 2024, the year Banjo-Kazooie finally comes back. All right. Phil Spencer said, Banjo fans, we hear you. This isn't all right. It can't be for nothing, Sam. It can't be for nothing. As Joel or Ellie said, Ellie in the last was, it can't be for nothing. He definitely dropped that for a reason. Some sort of Banjo thing is in the works. I have to fully believe this. I've seen rumors this week from an Xbox insider, quote unquote, talking about a new Banjo game. I want to believe. All right. I'm not putting the thing of Hawkeye turning and being like, don't give me hope from Avengers, right? Like, I'm doing the opposite. Like, give me the hope.
Yeah, I really want to get you a T-shirt that's like the "I want to believe aliens" thing, but instead of the flying saucer, it's just Banjo-Kazooie. You're just right there on the front. I feel like I can't wait for the Phil Spencer IGN interview where he sits down and he's like, there's a difference between me hearing you and listening to you. Those are two very different elements. But hey, don't stop dreaming, man. Anything's possible. We'll see what they come up with. I do think that is the furthest possible hope. I'm not going to build you up. Once again, I'm somebody who expects the worst and hopes for the best. So I'm hopeful for you. I'm just not expecting it to be reality.
That's fair. I got to keep the hope alive within me. Otherwise, depression. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about pie in the sky dreams, I'll throw an extra one out there and I'll sit there with you. New Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Let's go.
If we've got the Activision Blizzard acquisition, let's go ahead and pump it out. Let's get some kind of announcement or confirmation going. So you can hope for Banjo Kazooie coming back. I'll hope for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I don't even know if Tony Hawk's relevant for the youths anymore, but I want
Why
it. So
not?
we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
Put him in Crash Team Rumble.
Perfect. Yeah, Tony Hawk guest star in Crash Team Rumble. Yeah.
All right, Sam. Well, those are our predictions. Let us know yours in the comment down below. We do have a few listener questions to round out the show, so why don't we jump into those? Ghostly March writes in. He says, "Do you think we see any acquisitions this year?"
Ooh, good question. I don't think so. I think that right now, is there a need for any? I think that they've kind of gotten a lot of the elements that they need to really build this big, robust Xbox thing. And by thing, I mean like, catalog of developers and games and things where they've got this big stacked bench of talent. I think if there's any acquisitions, they might be technology related, where it's like back end streaming stuff, maybe third party support developers, like the people that do skyboxes and stuff like that. Maybe that makes sense. But I think after last year, everybody's just still recovering from the whirlwind of the FTC.
And the FTC technically is still fighting to
Technically.
undo it now. I'm going to say no for acquisitions this year. If it is, it'll be after any FTC trial stuff gets dismissed, probably.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's anywhere near as big. I've long said I think Asobo is the perfect studio for them to pick up. Plague Tale, Microsoft Flight Sim, I think they have that relationship. So it would be something along that size, I think, like a studio.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. Maybe they'll just acquire Epic Games and just totally shut us down. Who knows?
God. Yeah. We've entered an agreement to acquire Epic.
Oh my
Why?
gosh. If I
Why?
woke up to that headline, I don't know what I'd even do. I think I'm just gonna go on vacation for 2 weeks so I don't have to talk about it.
Fortnite money.
Fortnite money.
He also wrote in and says, "Do you guys think Final Fantasy 14 and other Square Enix titles can find success on Xbox this year?"
I think that anything can find success on Xbox. I think that I don't know if it'll find the same success that it would on PlayStation. I think that that audience might not necessarily be on this platform because the people that are looking for new Final Fantasy content are typically looking to PlayStation. That's kind of been the home for that kind of stuff for so long. And so I think it'll be something that evolves over time and gets more people in the door for years versus one big swath of like success at the end of 2024 as these games and Square Enix relationship starts to build.
I think the definition of success needs to be laid out, and I think it needs to be. I think it needs to be lower than what they expect for PlayStation. Like you can't have the same sales expectations on Xbox versus PlayStation or Switch or even PC. Probably like I think Xbox needs to have a lower. Like if we hit these numbers, then it's a success on this platform, and slowly, gradually increase that as you release more titles to the ecosystem. Like I'm going to be supporting it, not Final Fantasy 14 because it's an MMO, but like Visions of Mana. I'm going to be playing on Xbox. Like I support the games when they show up on the console.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, I support the games that show up on Game Pass too. And I'll admit that I make a cognizant choice to do that. Like with the Fallen Dynasty stuff, like I didn't pay for the base game. I'll buy all the DLC, and I chose to do that. And I think a lot of people don't think about that and still do it that way. But I also think that if you build it, they will come. If you bring the games to the platform, people will show up for them and discover more games they enjoy through that new availability.
I do. I have the same mindset. If a base game's on Game Pass, I don't mind buying the DLC. I did that for
Yeah.
like Nobody Saves the World. I'm like, this game is $25. They're asking me for like $5 for DLC. Here you go. Like,
Yeah,
that sounds
totally. I
great.
mean, like I've spent probably 80 hours in Wolong or more, and then I've spent $30 on DLC, and like that's all the money I've got invested in it. $30 for 80 hours. Hell yeah.
Yeah. We're going to go to Sam Heaney next because he has another 2024 related question. He says, with 2024 being the first year that Xbox has ABK in-house, do you expect there to be clear messaging via developer direct or otherwise as to exactly what their expansive catalog will be exclusive versus what will be multi-platform? With even more quote-unquote legacy IP than Bethesda, my prediction is that far less will be locked to Xbox than some might think, though, of course, new IP will be exclusive.
I don't think we'll get direct messaging. I don't think we're going to be seeing like a grid laid out of everything that's going to be multi-platform versus what's going to be Xbox exclusive. And I think it'll just come as franchises make their return through the years. Like we were talking about the next Crash game. My gut says multi-platform for Crash, but
Hmm.
also like could just be an Xbox game. I don't know. I played the Nintendo Switch version of Crash Trilogy over the Christmas break for a little bit at a friend's house, and I'm like, oh, it's cool to see these games exist on other platforms. So I think it's going to be handled on a case by case basis, like Phil said, but I do not think we're going to be seeing direct answers as to where we can expect stuff to be.
Nah, we're not getting clear messaging. I don't know. Sam, this is a ridiculous ask, all right? People are still arguing about Elder Scrolls coming to PlayStation, all right? Like
Yeah.
Xbox talks in vague riddles and expects you to understand what they mean by legacy versus existing on current platforms. Like it's all just going to be whatever they decide as case by case, like Sam was saying. Like this game's going to be I will say, any live service game multi-plat, 100%.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
All right. Terabo writes in, says Obsidian can be seen as Xbox's most consistent studio when it comes to quality. However, I can't help but wonder with the Avowed trailer, when will Obsidian level up? Hear me out. When I think of the studios Xbox has brought bar Bethesda, I expect an increase in production and execution. I look at Avowed and I see a game that doesn't look like Xbox had their fingers in it. I see a game that Obsidian probably could have done on their own. Granted, this is early footage, but there's nothing particularly special about it. I guess to sum it up, it seems this is more of this is what we can do for Xbox as opposed to what Xbox can do for Obsidian. Thoughts?
I think it's a very interesting call out. And I mean, I think it goes back to the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago of like Xbox still needs that big win. They still need that thing where it's like, this is why I buy an Xbox. Those experiences that people look at and they're like, graphically, this is beautiful. Gameplay wise, this is great. And I totally agree. I think that Avowed, it definitely looks like a magic RPG. Like I made a video on this a couple of days ago and people started commenting of like, there's nothing really amazing about Avowed
Mm-hmm.
that makes it stand out from any other thing. Like if you went into a game generator in Unreal Engine 5 and had Chat GPT integrated and you were like magic based FPS that looks like Skyrim, you might get Avowed. And that's not to say it's not going to have great stories that it tells and more deep elements that make it something that stands out, but that hasn't been proven yet. So I would love to see them level up. In the same breath, though, like looking at their entire roster of games, Pillars of Eternity is getting a ton of love lately as people are turning away from Diablo 4 and looking for that other itch to scratch. And Pillars of Eternity 2 is coming, and it looks like it builds on that too. We've got the Outer World stuff, but I don't know what the future looks like for Obsidian. I will say, like you said, they're some of the most consistent developers in the Xbox library. And I think that when it comes to knowing what they want to make and how to make it, they know those things. And I think
Mm-hmm.
they just got to continue refining and iterating.
I understand his question. I understand people wanting every first party to push the boundaries and give you high fidelity, like beautiful looking games. Because when you look over at PlayStation's first party, you don't have to make this a console war thing, but like God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, like their first party does put out those 200 to 300 million dollar games that look visually impressive. And when I look at the Xbox side, I think we explore the scale quite a bit more, where we get things like that are double A, things that where the graphics don't look maybe as good, but they went with an artistic style. I think of things like Grounded, where I think Grounded is a very pretty game, but it's not that high fidelity, like stunning, realistic visuals. So I think people just need to understand that Xbox kind of values variety more than they do every studio putting out some AAA blockbuster title.
Yeah. I don't want to go so far as to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because now I brought it up. But like, do you think that Microsoft is getting into the area or Xbox is getting into the area of focusing on quantity over quality? Like, is it a legitimate, point to bring up of like, we've got these big games that are coming out, but even if you put out two games in 1 year and that's all you've got, if they're both bangers, is that still better than having 5 games that are okay?
If we get more Redfalls, then yes, they're focusing on quantity over quality. My current feelings is that like if I had to describe Xbox's like first party catalog, it's the eights. Like
Yeah.
they hang in that 8 range. And for me, that's great. Like those are great games. I love the variety that Xbox provides. That's why it's my primary platform. But for a lot of people, like might only have the funds or the time to play 10s, 9s, like on those review scales. And so when they look at Xbox, they see things that are of lesser quality. So right now, I don't think Xbox has a quality problem. I think what they put out is good, like good, great quality, with the occasional stinker. But people want them to put out the higher, like they want them to level up, as Terabo was saying.
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see how things evolve over time because, and I don't have an answer to this question, but like, would you rather have 5 8s or 2 10s or even 5 8s and 1 10? And like, it's just like immediate. You look at it and you're like, game of the year, like a Baldur's Gate 3 level win from Microsoft rather than having all of these different projects that are coming out. You know what I mean? Where it's just
No, I do.
it's a different thing. And I think that's what they need to level up in the mind's eye of the gaming community. Like they need something huge.
And I think that's going to differ person to person. Like if you
Yeah.
gave me the choice, would I rather have 5 hi-fi rushes, say, or
Right.
or 1 Baldur's Gate Tears of the Kingdom? I would rather have the 5 hi-fi rushes.
Same.
So it depends. Everybody's gonna have a different answer to that because some people will only be like they want that giant blockbuster hit that they're gonna latch onto and be like, I'm gonna champion this game all year.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Kevin only wants 4 sequels to Hi-Fi Rush and
4
nothing else.
sequels to
That's
Hi-Fi
exactly
Rush.
what he wants. That's
Yes,
no other games in development. All of the Call of Duty developers, Hi-Fi Rush now.
Hi-Fi Rush 2 through 6. Thank you.
Please.
All right. Taylor writes in with our last question. He says, I've been deep diving into Flight Simulator. Leave it to Asobo of all studios, LOL. What developer comes to mind who also has that kind of range?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Gosh, I don't have any that immediately come to mind. Do you have an answer ready for this one?
It's not on the Xbox side, but I think like Guerrilla over on PlayStation they went from first person shooter to like a third person action adventure open world style game. I think they're always like the big one we think of, like studios doing different things. I'd love to say Ninja Theory, but playing Enslaved, I'm like, I can kind of see the like beginnings of Hellblade where it's like a third person, like even the running animation kind of looks similar. So like for me, they don't really have like a ton of range. Maybe Double Fine has, like, they do a lot of, not in the same way, but their games are always high quality and a wide spectrum of games.
Yeah, I think that it's probably just because we were just talking about them, but Obsidian is also one that is a really good pick of like, you go from Grounded to Avowed to Pillars of Eternity, even going back in the backlog, they have like South Park Stick of Truth that they developed with Ubisoft. Like they just have really good developers that are able to make whatever they really need to make or want to make. And they follow that passion through it. So I'd probably pick Obsidian as far as like range goes of a really good example. Also, like shout out to the Forza Horizon developers, Playground. Yeah, like for them to go from Forza Horizon to something like Fable, I mean, that's some range. We don't know what that final game is going to look like.
I didn't pick them because I don't know if Fable is going to be any good. Right, if Fable comes out and hits, then I'll be like, yeah, okay, they can make a racing car game and now an RPG.
Yeah, so like if that lands, then I would say that that's also a really good example. So we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, 343, tons of range, just so much range with what they work on.
Yeah, they got range. They range from completely broken to redemption.
Ooh, man, the burn is valid. Burn is valid.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Well, that is all we have for this week's show. Thanks you for hanging out with me as usual. You want to let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me JamPackSam everywhere there is content. I don't know. That's a pretty good way to describe it. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all those places, YouTube and all that. So I've been having a good time lately and we're going to keep it going through 2024. But as always, pleasure to be here with you tonight talking some gaming news, or at least predicting what the news is going to be.
Yeah, and we're going to nail it, especially the Banjo-Kazooie one. I feel it in my soul. But you can find me at the Muffin Mon on X or Twitter. It's a 1 and 7 I and O and 7A. Follow us at Save Game Media over on Twitter. Stay up to date with all the latest and come join the Discord. I'm posting there a lot more, asking for more community involvement, get you into the shows. Not only this one, but we got our Game of the Year discussion coming up this weekend. We got more things, more opportunities to get involved. So please come join the Discord. But until next week, we'll see you